Hey, what's up, beautiful people? It's your host, Nessa here, and welcome back to another episode of the Womxnhood podcast. This episode is coming up on the 4th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting, which was June 12, 2016, and is in remembrance of the victims and survivors. 4 years later, and the legacy of the Pulse nightclub shooting is still unfolding before our eyes. One of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. Victims are still healing mentally and physically. Family and friends are still grieving the loss of loved ones, and survivors are sharing their stories, finding new ways to advocate for the LGBTQA community and minorities. On this episode today, I will be speaking with Dr. Erica, the Associate Director for the LGBTQA initiatives here at FIU. Before we get right into the episode, I'm hoping you all come in with open ears and open hearts, as this is an opportunity for me myself to learn about the LGBTQA community, and I hope it'll also be for you too. So let's bring Erica in. Welcome, Erica. I'm so excited to have you here today to speak about the Pulse nightclub shooting, raising awareness for the LGBTQA community, and just things that are happening in the world right now that are affecting the LGBTQA community. Erica, just speak about who you are and what you do, a little background about yourself, and maybe just share a weird fun fact about yourself as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me, Vanessa. This is super exciting to be on this podcast. And so I am Dr. Erica Jayne Friedman. As you said, I'm the Associate Director for LGBTQA initiatives. I use any and all pronouns, which basically means my gender and my sexuality are both fluid. I don't actually put a gender or sexuality label on who I am, a little different than I think what most people are used to. But my gender and sexuality are experiences for me. So that's kind of like my positionality in the community. I'm from New York originally. I got to Miami last July. So I'm coming up on my 1-year anniversary of living in Miami, and 1 year at FIU. So I'm still learning a lot, and it's super exciting to be here and to be in this position. I've always wanted to have this kind of a role. I spent over 10 years doing research in gender and sexuality. My degree is in social psychology, but I focused all of my research on gender and sexuality, and then worked in various higher ed positions, specifically focused on getting underrepresented students access to undergraduate research opportunities. So that was my work before, and I'm just super excited now to kind of combine those two, giving, our LGBTQ students opportunities, that I've been able to give to lots of other students before in the other positions I've had. Weird fun fact about me. I was a drag king for several years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I was kind of like a chameleon drag king. I changed my name, and I would change my persona for every kind of performance that I would do, but that was really fun. And sometimes I come out of retirement for my students.
Did you do that like in New York?
I did that back in New York. Yeah, I have yet to do any performances here in Miami.
Miami.
Yeah.
That'd be cool to do like some in Miami. I think around the South Beach area, I feel like there's a lot of like, my friend went to like a drag queen type of event for her birthday, and it was just like, wow, this is like so cool. Like there's another world in that. So that's awesome. Like, thank you for sharing that. That's really awesome. So let's just jump right into it. The 4th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub. Let's talk about it. So for you all listening in, that may not know about the Orlando's Pulse nightclub shooting that happened, just to give you all some background information. So the Orlando Pulse Dance Club it's established as one of the Central Florida's most vibrant centers for the LGBTQ plus community, for their social life. That's somewhere that they can go and have community and have fun. But on the night of the attack, the club was hosting its popular Latin night. So there was a large Latinx community, minority community there, an event that drew from a broad cross-section of the community. And so this attack was an act, it's unfortunate, of hate, of terror. So I would like to know, what were some of the reactions, maybe from you yourself, but also from the LGBTQA plus community here at FIU, after the post nightclub shooting, or even I know that you mentioned that you've only been at FIU for a year, so maybe even during your work at New York, what were some of the reactions from the community?
Yeah, so I was at a very small, also commuter public college out on Long Island, Farmingdale State College, when
Mm-hmm.
the Pulse nightclub shooting happened. And I mean, personally, when I found out, I mean, it's devastating. I mean, the size of that shooting. I mean, it was the biggest number of, or the largest number of people, impacted in a shooting in history in the U.S. And I mean, that alone is devastating. And then the fact that it was an LGBTQ space. We've been talking this week a bit about queer spaces, and does safe space really exist, and all of that on our Instagram live. And like that's something that queer people and especially queer people of color create spaces to.
Sorry to pause you. There may be some people listening in that may not know what queer is. This may be a new term for them. So can you speak about like what queer is?
Absolutely. So, and I will say this also,
Mm-hmm.
queer is a term that was reclaimed by the LGBTQ community. It used to be a slur,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of people who do still interpret it that way. So I use it in the reclaimed way of kind of
Mm-hmm.
taking it back, and also to represent a wide swath of people in the community. But LGBTQ is also, accurate to use to kind of represent at least some of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Language is difficult always, right? In terms of
Yeah.
representation, you're always going to leave people out. But the term is meant to refer to people in the LGBTQ community as a whole.
Okay.
So yes, so just the fact that we're trying to create these spaces that are for us where we can feel like normal, like and everywhere else in society where, we're looked at a certain way, or we can't move in our relationships, we can't hold hands with our partners freely without the eyes or stares of other people. We can create these nice spaces where we can feel comfortable with each other. And here's an instance where, we think that going to a club, at this point, right, in this day and age, is going to be relatively safe for us if it's a queer space. But here was someone who entered that space and created absolute chaos, and it's devastating to a community. It's a collective trauma. We talk about personal trauma and all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
when it hits a community, at its heart like that, our there's controversy around this, but like our communities are often built around gay bars, right? Around these
Yeah.
bars and clubs. And when that's targeted, it just hits home so hard. So, it hit me really hard in that sense. And then I also watched as, my queer Black friends and queer, Latinx friends and people in the community that fell at the intersections there. It's like a double hit, because it's not just their queer identity being hit, but it's also their Latinx identity or their black identity. It's all of those things together. And so at Farmingdale State College, one of our queer Black faculty members contacted me, and I was new on campus. I actually just started in my role, but there was very few queer folks on that campus. So, so one of our faculty contacted me, and I helped pull together some of the organizations on Long Island, and some of the students and all that, got everybody together, and we had a vigil on our campus. So that was the response there, and that was also the response at FIU. So this year is our 5th annual. It's the 4th anniversary, but the 5th annual, because we had a vigil right away that year, right in the response after it happened. From the photos that I've seen, it's a huge turnout. I mean, the space in the Graham Center, in front of the pit, is where we've traditionally held the vigil. And the photos, at least that I've seen, from the past, were, lots of people like crowded in that area for this, because it hits, especially down here. Oh my gosh, like in accepting this position, and coming here, I knew how close I would be to Orlando, and that I was thinking in my head, there are probably students who knew some of the people, who were affected, or, or faculty and staff who had them as students. And it turns out there is there is a student, at least one that I know of at this point, and I'm still trying to learn if there was anybody else, but one student, Jerry Wright, he graduated in 2012 with his bachelor of science in hospitality management, and he was one of the victims at Pulse. So he is one of our alumni, and we're lucky enough this Friday at our vigil to have his parents who've offered to speak. So I am so grateful to them to bring a real person to this. And then I spoke to his mother last night on the phone, and it was just so emotional, to hear her speak about an actual life. This is an actual human being with people who loved him
Yeah.
and cared about him, and he's gone. And there's 48 more of them. So it's so important that we have vigils like this, because we really don't know who's in the room, who's affected, and who needs to heal and process, as well as collectively as a community.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And just knowing that FIU has like a large Latinx community, right? What are some ways, this can be something that's ongoing here in the LGBTQ community at FIU. What are some ways that the LGBTQ community is making spaces for the Latinx community to feel safer, or they may feel as if, okay, I'm in this LGBT community, but I am a minority. I am the target in a sense. So how do I feel safe in these spaces still?
I mean, I'll be honest, like this is the conversations we've been having all week, that, you can't really call a space safe. There's no such thing. There really isn't. It's a farce, and it comes from a point of privilege to even call a space safe. That means that like you must have some amount of safety to be able to say that, or to claim that a space is safe. But we do our best to try to be as inclusive in our programming as possible, and the language that we're using is really important, but also in the actions that we're taking to talk about the intersections of identity within our community, and not just hold events like this around the deaths of people, but also celebrate the lives of people who made significant contributions. For example, Sylvia Rivera was one of the kickstarters of the Stonewall riots and the LGBTQ movement. And yeah, so making sure that we're paying respect to people like that, and also raising up those voices as much as possible. And like, look, it's never enough. There's never enough that we can do until there is equal rights, like literally for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not enough, and it's never going to be enough, and we can't claim that we are doing enough, because clearly we're not. If we're still here.
Yeah. Yeah, and intersectionality, you brought that up. So this is a common used word, but what exactly does it mean? Like, to take it further, what does it mean for the LGBTQA plus community? There's people that are like, I feel like this word is like too, like I can't really understand what it means. Does it apply to me? And can you just break it down in simple terms of what intersectionality is?
Yeah, for sure. So intersectionality was coined in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw. She was a lawyer and a critical race theorist. And she specifically coined the term intersectionality to draw attention to the unique experiences of Black women compared to Black men or white women, just as examples. But people have kind of taken this concept now and expanded it to other identities as well. So to visualize intersectionality, she asked people to think of two roads coming together at an intersection. So you could call one road Black Identity Avenue, just as an example, while the other road that intersects could be called Trans Feminine Boulevard. Okay, just examples, right? And then where they meet, so Black Identity Avenue, Trans Feminine Boulevard, where they meet is the unique experience of a trans feminine Black person. These two intersecting marginalized identities give people a very different experience than, say, a Black cisgender man's experience. And that unique experience is your experience of intersectionality. It's the crossing of your identities. and usually referring to your marginalized identities. So you could say like, okay, there's cisgender boulevard and, white avenue, but like, yeah, your intersection is going to look very different than a Black trans woman, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. You made that like in such simple terms. Like, honestly, I feel like I've heard so many definitions. I'm like, okay, I'm really trying to understand this. But the example that you use with the intersections crossing, like the people listening in right now, they're going to understand this like to another level. So thank you, Erica. Like, honestly. So how do we make activism more practically intersectional, right? There needs to be intersectionality within the Black Lives Matter movement. Like, let's talk about that's going on right now. So there's individuals in the All Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter, but specifically with Black Lives Matter, I was reading a document that mentioned that too often the violence against Black transgender people at the hands of the police are ignored, when in fact transgender people are 7 times more likely to experience physical violence when interacting with the police than non-trans people, according to the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs. And according to the 2011 report from the National Center for Transgender Equality, nearly half of all Black transgender people have been incarcerated. This is a direct result of Black transgender people being marginalized within their own communities and beyond. So how do you think activists can be practically intersectional within the Black Lives Matter movement for Black transgender individuals?
I mean, it means saying names like Tony McDade.
Mm-hmm.
It means saying, pointing out the brutality, that Ayanna Dior experienced. We don't hear those 2 names, as often in the mix, as hearing George Floyd's name. So doing this work of intersectional activism, it means, centering and including the experiences and needs of all people who are impacted by the focus of your work, not only in your language, but in your actions too. So, if you're fighting to get rid of, the cash bail system, make sure that you point out that not only are, people of color disproportionately affected by cash bail, but trans people of color are even greater, disproportion of being impacted by it, an unnecessary detention, pretrial detention. So like that's just an example, like things like that, are important, that people are bringing awareness to that within the movement, and recognizing, the parallels, between people's experiences, and that, everybody has a stake in this. And, I say like, you can't have justice without justice for all. Like it doesn't happen. And I know that people say like, we're not saying all lives matter. We're saying all Black lives matter, right? But all is important there. And if you're not including everyone, then you can't have Black lives mattering.
That's so good. Like including the all
Black lives matter. Yeah, like to differentiate from just all lives matter. Like that's something else. But all Black lives. So it's emphasizing, so on my protest sign, I went to one of the protests in downtown Miami a couple weeks ago. On my sign, I wrote Black trans lives matter to draw attention specifically to the trans movement. But some people are writing all Black lives matter now as a way of being even more inclusive, right? So yeah, I mean, it's important that we're centering not just in our language, but in our actions and in the demands that the Black Lives Matter movement is making, that list of demands is including, queer people and trans people who are Black as well. Right?
Yeah, definitely. So I know that LGBTQA, the issues and racial issues, they're not mutually exclusive. Like LGBTQA plus people of color navigate a complicated network of systematic oppression and injustices on all sides, right? So I would like to know, for the LGBT community at FIU, since the outpouring of Black Lives Matter and the protests, like what exactly is the LGBTQA community at FIU doing to protect the Black identifying students within that community? Are there what are some new ways that you all are incorporating safety for the Black community?
Well, again, I will say that, we're not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for a year and kind of observing, what have we done in the past? What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing moving forward? And just like it's never going to be enough. So that's the first thing. But and I could sit here and name all that programming that we have done or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
it really doesn't it really doesn't matter until we are really focusing on how to collaborate more with the BSU. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing that,
Yeah.
but also just like doing some self-examination as well. I'm white, and I have
Yeah.
to also examine my own implicit biases as a leader of this office. I need to check myself,
Yeah.
and incorporate and include as many students who are Black, are at the intersections of their Black and queer or Black and trans identity as possible. So we have, we hire students in our office. I have a very small team, but
Mm-hmm.
we have 2 grad assistant positions that we get, and then I can hire like work study students. And one of my big things, since I got here, my vision for this office has been about empowering students to take ownership over this office. And so I've been really, really focused on getting more students who represent the diversity of our community in the office, advocating for what they need. I'm not going to know. I like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I'm going to do all the research that I can do. I'm going to do all the checking of my implicit biases that I can do. But at the end of the day, like, I'm going to also age out of this age group that is our students too, and not know what they need. So I want them, to have the tools that they need to take the programming that we do in this office forward. And by centering them, right, and giving them those tools to succeed,
Yeah.
they'll be able to provide what the community needs better than I'll ever know. And I think that's what this movement is saying. It's not just
Yeah.
about this moment of George Floyd or
Mm.
Tony McDade or
Yeah.
any, it's not just about that. There is systemic racism, and
Yeah.
it has to be dismantled by centering those people in spaces where they didn't previously have privilege. So my
Mm.
office was traditionally run by one person, sitting in that office doing that work, and basically telling students like, here, go do this, go do that. I'm not about that. I'm about telling the students, you have the power, right? You
Mm.
have the power to do these things and to create these things. And here's the tools to do that. And I'm going to give you the resources to make it happen. So, for example, I'm super, super happy to see that we have our Pride Student Union forming now.
Mm.
This was
Yeah.
something that I think was started a couple of years ago before I got here. A couple of students got together and tried to start it, and then some things, political things happened, and it disbanded, and then now it's back. And I'm leading the formation committee, and the students got together, elected an e-board, and they're going to be proposing to the SGA to be a council in the fall. And I'm super proud of the whole e-board. They
Mm-hmm.
really represent a diversity of our community. The president is Rosen Gordon, who is a Black non-binary trans man, who helped co-lead the Black Lives Matter protest on campus over the weekend.
Oh, that happened
So
recently.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
awesome.
So my hope is that by empowering student leaders such as Rosen and by
Mm-hmm.
preparing them and providing them with the tools that they need to succeed, it will continue to better serve all students in our LGBTQ community. And it's a process, right? I'm not claiming that we were able to protect Black students right now. We're not. We're just not. But I'm
Yeah,
hoping that we can get there.
definitely. So that leads to like the call to action and just raising awareness virtually. What does effective allyship look like? There are some people that honestly, I've like recently being on social media and Instagram with like all that's happening, some people just want like the clout. Like they're like, okay, I'm doing this. I just want the hand clasp. But like, what does it actually look like? You have to be able to go in the depths of it, be with that person, like through thick and thin, like whatever's going on. It's not just, I mean, you can post a post, right? You can do that, but what else are you doing, right? Like, how else are you advocating for their rights and things of that sort? And so I think that's like effective allyship is something that individuals and students maybe listening as well need to be able to grasp more and knowing the depths of it. So if you can like expand on like what I just mentioned, that would be great.
Yeah, so that's actually my first point was that, I need anybody who's in a position of privilege who wants to get involved to check themselves. Who or what purpose do you have in posting? You're throwing up a black square. Great. But if the answer to why you're doing that is something about you and looking good and woke, just stop right there and reassess. Just stop right there and reassess. Don't go talk to your black friends if you have any. Go talk to your white friends, right? And discuss, what you're doing wrong and have a conversation with them and figure that out and then go do some research. Yeah, that's my first thing. I wanted to also call attention to a word that I'm starting, I kind of grappled with at first, and now I'm kind of getting behind it. So my student Rosen has actually used this word before, and Babyface, who works in the Center for Service, who was on our program yesterday, also uses this word. So instead of allyship, I always like to use a advocate, because it has a bit of like call to action within it, like you're advocating for something, right? But Rosen and Babyface have consistently used the word accomplice. And I kind of like it because and I'm gonna say it the way Babyface said it yesterday on our program, which is like, it's like you're gonna rob a bank or something, right? Like it's like you're running, it has action in it, and it does have risk involved too. And I think there needs to be some amount of risk for it to be effective. So that's one piece that I just wanted to throw in there that I think is really great, that comes, directly from our Black, queer, and trans, folks at FIU who are speaking and using that language. But some ways that you can do the work of effective allyship is like that first thing, right? Check yourself. And, the research is out there, that the tools are out there for you. There's tons of ally resources. There's like ally guides and all that stuff. So you go look at those if you don't know where to start. They exist. Research LGBTQ history, research Black history, find where the gaps, where the holes are, and examine your implicit biases. We all have them. We all grew up in a racist America. We all grew up in a heterosexist and cisgenderist America. We have assumptions about people's genders. We look at somebody and we make that assumption. We all have it. I do it. I make mistakes on pronouns all the time, and I'm in this work. I literally did my dissertation on misgendering. So I make those mistakes, and we all have that within us. And once we start admitting that and talking about that, and then like that awareness is what will help us undo it, right? That's the first step. Follow LGBTQ people on social media, share their stories, not just Ellen.
I'm done.
Not just Ellen.
That's such a great point. That's such a great point.
Support local LGBTQ artists and writers and entrepreneurs. We have tons of them in Miami who are doing amazing work. I love Octavia Yearwood. She I totally stand for her. Yeah, she's great. I mean, that's just one example, right? Like there's so many. And it's easy to find now with social media. You just you like one or follow one, and you get connected to 5 others. Donate to organizations if you have the money, do that, but it doesn't have to be monetary. There's a lot of orgs that are accepting perishables and clothing. There's some great orgs that are doing that right here in Miami. But if you do have the ability to donate money, donate to grassroots orgs, especially the trans focused ones. There's the Transgender Variant and Intersex Justice Project, the Marsha P. Johnson Institute, Sylvia Rivera Law Project, Youth Breakout, Trans Latina Coalition. I could go on and on.
There's so many,
here in Miami, there's Trans Social and Trans Inclusive Group, which is run by a Black trans woman, Tatiana Williams, who's awesome. So follow them on Instagram, donate to them if you can. And there's also petitions online and cash apps that you can contribute to. So I mentioned Ayana Dior before. She has a cash app that you can donate to help her deal with the trauma and the legal expenses and just the general aftermath of being attacked. So these are all things that are researchable online. Another piece is that bothers me, and I know I'm kind of going on and on here, but there's a lot,
You're
right?
good.
There's a lot that
Yeah,
goes into
there
this.
is.
But I especially in this position, and I've never had this perspective before, because I've never been in a role where I was leading an LGBTQ group or organization on a campus or off campus.
Mm-hmm.
I never realized what it was like to be in this position during a month like Pride, where you start getting asked during this month and only this month to do things for other people and for other orgs. It's like Pride Month hits and everyone's like, oh yeah, queer people exist. We've got to do something, right?
Yeah.
Like corporations put up their rainbows everywhere. It's only for this month, and then they forget about us for the rest of the year. So think about, as an ally, as an accomplice, how you can go beyond Pride Month to contribute to this work. There's so much of this, just focusing on this month. Go beyond that. How can you extend that beyond this moment? And next week on Thursday, we're going to announce this on our Instagram, but we have our That's So Queer program is being led by students, and they decided to focus on Pride beyond the parade and ways that you can
that contribute
is good. Beyond. Yeah. So I think that's going to be from 6 to 7 next Thursday.
Awesome. So these are like some really awesome points. I really like how you mentioned it's not just for this month that you put like a rainbow on your Instagram post. Like, no, what are you doing after that? And the same with Black Lives Matter. Like, it's not just posting a black circle on your page. Like, what are you doing after that? Like, let's come on, people. Like, we have to do this together. So I really like that you mentioned that. So are there any other resources that you would like to share with our listeners on how to better support the LGBTQA community in Miami, or like at FIU as well? Any other resources you'd like to mention?
And I actually wanted to comment on the comparison, the parallel that you made to Black Lives Matter, because I was involved in the Occupy Wall Street protests back in the early 2010s. And there was so much great energy and so much commitment, and it went on for a good long time, like almost a year, right? And then it died, and it faded out, and it's so disheartening and disappointing. And I know that the Black communities have been fighting this fight, for decades, and and recently, with the exposure of deaths of Trayvon Martin, and I don't want it to die again, right? I don't want it to die out. And I've just seen that in my lifetime, and I know Black folks have seen it in their lifetime over and over. And I can't say enough how important it is that we're thinking beyond this moment. It is so important that we are making those changes within ourselves so that we can systematically do that in everything, right? And with racism and sexism and all of the other things too,
and
right?
education, and like there's so many, police brutality is just like one part of it.
One.
There's education, there's healthcare, like there's so many layers to it. But if we do it together, like we can make a change. Like honestly, we need each other. Like every aspect of like what we bring to the table is needed. And I think that's an important part to make, because some people may feel like, okay, but is this really enough? Like, am I doing enough? Like, but like every part of it, like if you know that you have the right heart posture in doing it, and that you are really like putting your best effort, like that matters, and that's needed at the table. So definitely.
And the LGBTQ community and the Black Lives Matter movement, like these two movements are so interestingly parallel and intertwined. And I think we can learn from each other in that regard, and because we've left out LGBTQ people has been a white gay man's movement when it was kicked off by Black trans women, and like they got left behind and they got left out, and we focused on gay marriage, and who did that benefit the most but white cisgender gay men, and so it's the same kind of conversation for Black Lives Matter, is like include queer and trans folks, don't leave them behind. Like who are the most privileged in your community are going to benefit before the people who that also need to be raised up. So Okay, so I'll give you some more resources.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
other resources specifically from our office. Of course, you know, I welcome anyone to get involved in our office in any way that you can. I will do my best to pay you, although I have limited resources as well. If students have work study, they can come work in my office. That's
Okay,
easy.
awesome.
So you can get involved in our office that way. You can also get involved in the Pride Student Union. So the formation committee is meeting every other Wednesday this summer. So that's like really, really good if you want to get involved in like the formation of this. But then after, they're also going to be carrying forward our signature events in the office and what the content of that is going to look like, as well as other events that they want to do. So if you want to join like the general board, you can contribute to those events. And they're also focused on advocacy. So you have something that you've seen on campus that you don't like, and you know you want that to change. My voice can only go so far, because I'm gonna get asked, well, what do the students want?
Yeah.
When I go, they're gonna be like, well, do students care about this, or is this just your thing? So
Yeah.
it's better when students come forward with that stuff. So that's just like my kind of calls to action in that sense. But we have safe zone training programs for faculty and staff on campus. We have resources on our website. There's lgbt.fiu.edu has a whole bunch of resources, some of which come from our trainings. We have programs on demand through the MPAS office. We do one on gender pronoun use and one on affirming and supporting LGBTQIA+ people. So students can request those. Yeah, and then just follow us on our Instagram, because we're always sharing and posting, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. So everyone listening in, make sure you have a pen and paper and you actually wrote that down. Like, or you can go back, scroll right back on the podcast app that you're watching, and you can re-listen to all that. Make sure to follow on the social media platforms, because that's so needed, and you can just stay updated with everything that they're doing over there within the community. So awesome. So how can people reach you, Erica? There may be some people listening in that are like, okay, like I actually need to get in contact with her. Like, what's her email? What's her Instagram? Like, okay. So what are some ways that people can contact you?
Well, I forgot to mention our handle for the office, which is at FIU LGBTQA. So that'll work, but I have all my students on there, my student assistants on there, and so sometimes it gets drowned out. But at Dr. Erica Jayne, so it's DrErica Jayne. I got that like really strange Y in there. That's a great way to get in touch with me. I'm on Instagram like all the time. Gotta stop that. But yeah, DM me. Feel free to DM me. It's a great way to get in touch. And then my email is Friedma. They took the N off the end of my name there at fiu.edu. It's EFRIEDMA at fiu.edu.
Okay, great. So just to wrap up, we like to end with a signature question. So before we go, we have a fill in the blank for our guests to be able to just express their journey of womanhood. So Erica, to be a woman is to?
For me, it's to be authentic and growth-minded at the same time. It's a challenge.
That's so good. That's so good. That's so good. Authentic. Like, I really love that word, authentic. That's so good.
It's a practice. It's a practice, right? Because you have to keep kind of like reeling yourself back to like who you are.
Yeah. And who you truly are on the inside. Yeah, definitely. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you so much, Erica, for coming on and having this conversation with me. I hope it was a learning experience for those listening in, that you were able to receive something from this, that you actually take initiative and find new ways that you can help out the community, the LGBTQ community, as well as the Black community as well. So I'm really thankful for this conversation. I hope you all get in contact with Erica. If you have any other questions, comments, make sure to reach out to her with the information that she provided, her email and her Instagram.
Thank you once again, Erica, for having this conversation with me and just sharing your expertise about the LGBTQA community and sharing resources so that individuals can support if they don't already. I'd also like to thank you all that's tuning in to the second episode for this summer semester. If you are not already following us on Instagram, Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Women's Center FIU for all things Women's Center related, for all the upcoming events and projects and programs that we have for you all this summer semester as well as for the fall semester. You want to stay up to date with that information. But before you go, below in the comment section, share how you plan on supporting the LGBTQA community. And if you have been supporting this community already, share some tips on those that are trying to become an advocate or they want to be an ally. Possibly you can share your expertise and just information that I believe will be beneficial. I also want this to be a learning experience. As always, it's your girl Nessa, and I'll see y'all in the next episode.